Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Cobra Kai, the new 2018 YouTube Red 10-episode television show. I guess it's actually a streaming show, so that is the correct term, a streaming show. I watched all of it. This content contains major spoilers for Cobra Kai throughout. All right, I really enjoyed this streaming show. Thought they did a fantastic job. This show was pretty much made for me. Like, I was a huge fan. Of course, I was probably 11 or 12, I think, when Karate Kid came out. Just like every junior high boy in the 80s, I absolutely loved this movie, and a lot of people beyond that specific range. But I love the original Karate Kid. I've seen all the Karate Kid movies, every single one, even the Will Smith's son with Jackie Chan, the remake. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and it was really wonderful. The whole series was wonderful. Pat Morita was one of my favorite parts of the series, but they brought back Cobra Kai. And I just do want to talk a little bit about this. So from a dollars and cents perspective, I was really fascinated how this got created. So I have been reading a good number of articles that explain, why this was made, and it is pretty interesting. So one, YouTube had to bid for this content, right? So they had to fight for it. They had to put up some real money, and there were competitive bids for this project. And which I thought was really interesting. So one of the things is, like, there was a distinct payday for Ralph Macchio and for William Zabka, and so for them, I think they got some significant, probably in the millions, maybe even a low millions, to be in this. I think there was very significant paydays for both of them to put this together, which I think is really interesting. And I have to say, I have YouTube Red. I love YouTube Red, but I pay $10 a month for one feature, which is I listen to YouTube like radio, right? So I listen to a lot of talking head content on YouTube, and with YouTube Red, you can just you could turn off the screen on your phone, and then you could have streaming content without it burning your battery down, right? Because the screen is on full view or even low emission, and that is invaluable to me. Like, it's weird that I pay for that, but I do pay for that. I've been a YouTube Red person for a long time. That one feature I just cannot do without it. It's incredibly useful, and there's a ton of wonderful audio content, which is considered video content by everybody else on YouTube. But I really, if you're not paying attention to YouTube as audio content, really consider it, because it's just like podcasts or radio. I do use YouTube Red for so one, I've tried a lot of the YouTube originals, and I just really didn't like many of them at all. It really is just not, so here's the point. Cobra Kai is the first YouTube Red content that I have been eagerly looking forward to, and that I then watched, and it was fantastic. So I really feel like this is kind of a graduation point for YouTube Red. I think they've really delivered a tremendous show that Amazon Prime or Netflix are envious that it's not on their platforms. That's fantastic. I think that's really cool. And I'm hoping that this is the dawn of a lot of really great content for YouTube Red. Right? I also think it's interesting that the first time YouTube Red really creates content that people really want to see is not when YouTubers are creating it, but when actually Hollywood directors and actual stars come in and create a real show. It's kind of interesting. So the story of Cobra Kai is absolutely fantastic. I think that's the heart. So Ralph Macchio talked about this. He said that a lot of people asked him to do this and wanted to revive it. And I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. Fuller House. There's an article that said the success of Fuller House on Netflix really is what did it and brought this this content to be created, and allowed YouTube and Amazon Prime and Netflix to take it seriously and say, we know there's an actual audience for these old 80s remakes, right? So so basically and if you look at the timing too, you can see Fuller House did its thing, and then, they started shopping this around. So I thought that was really interesting. I think, and then Ralph Macchio also said that the reason why he came on board was that the directors who brought this forward, the guys from Hot Tub Time Machine, interesting, that they really brought forward a fantastic, actual, real story, right? Something that was unique, something that had good direction, something that had momentum, and I agree with that. All of that is here. Like, this is brilliant. I think one of the things that made this really such a great show is that they avoided the obvious mistakes, and they really made the show about a new generation of Karate Kids, right? So Miguel is this Hispanic student who is taught by Johnny Lawrence, and that the sensei student relationship between Miguel and Johnny, Johnny Lawrence being the opponent that Daniel LaRusso fought in Karate Kid, that's the heart of the movie, and it's really a recovery and almost a redemption story for Johnny Lawrence, which I thought that's really sound. That is a really solid, cool idea that I think really works, and that's why this was a very strong show. The other thing is the show is very, the story is extremely well crafted, and it just really holds together extremely well, right? So Miguel, and so essentially what we see is that Johnny Lawrence is a day laborer. Just kind of he's a contractor, okay? He's a very skilled, manual labor, carpenter, and doing construction and contracting jobs, right? And I thought it was really interesting that they showed that he did have skill, right? But because he wasn't happy with this work, and because he had turned out to be a bad dad, right, and a bad husband, he is very sad, and he drinks a lot, right? And actually, it's one of the things I loved about this show is I thought they were very realistic about his addiction to alcohol, right? And there's a point in the film where they come in and they show Johnny Lawrence, his dojo is finally clicking, and it's syncing, and things are working, right? And there's a point where, he goes to get a Coors Banquet. By the way, I am absolutely, gobsmacked on how product placement is being sold today. So Johnny Lawrence is clearly an alcoholic, right? And he is drinking Coors Banquets throughout the entire show, right? Near the end he stops, and so very close to the entire show. And it looks like Coors paid for that product placement. I'm like, this is crazy. It seems like it's clearly a negative take on that specific thing. Any logical beer company wouldn't touch this product placement with a 10-foot pole, but Coors is right there paying for placement. I'm like, what? That's really shocking to me. Excuse me. So so it was just, I was like, wow. So anyway, excuse me. So basically, at that point, and I have to say, when the redemption arc for Johnny Lawrence in this is tremendous. It is really, really well done. When he pulls out the orange juice out of the fridge and does not get the Coors Banquet, there's a tear coming down my eye. I was, and the reason why is, I really think that's one of the reasons why fiction is so important. Is it is incredibly hard to turn away from addictive substances. Now, actually, I'm fortunate. I never have struggled in any way with any kind of alcohol or drugs. One of the reasons why is I knew that there was a history of this far back in our family, And I never started drinking, and I never did any illegal drugs, and it's turned out to be a superpower for me. I'm very, very fortunate, and I highly recommend never starting to use anything that, any type of intoxicants ever. Because once you get, out of college, it's not really an issue, and it's wonderful. It makes you far more stable, and all. There's a lot of benefits to never starting any type of intoxicants. So, but within my life, I've been friends with people who have struggled with this, and it's incredibly hard to move away from these intoxicants and these addictive substances. And one of the things they showed in here is that he had to do it one step at a time. Like he had to, he starts drinking orange juice, but then he drinks some more later, after that. And now he's drinking less, and maybe moving toward the point where he's not drinking at all, right? And the other thing is, there's just so many points where Johnny Lawrence is shown to have to grow in actual ways that are difficult for him, and do a good job, and actually move beyond what you would expect, right? And I was really just flabbergasted what a great job they did with this. So the story really is about Johnny Lawrence, which I think that's the perfect way to do it. And the recreation of the Cobra Kai, strike first, strike hard, no mercy, and showing how this is taught to students, and how for some students, this message that is less than perfect is better than nothing. And I thought that was good too, because the reality is Johnny Lawrence as a sensei is absolutely terrible. He drinks a lot, right? He is insensitive. He is very cavalier with the safety of his students, right? All of this, right? And but the reality is, Miguel, his student, doesn't have a sensei, and it's pretty clear in the film that he doesn't have any money, right? He lives with he comes from a single parent family, and his mother only. His father isn't in the picture, right? And that's pretty bad. That's a bad situation, right? For him, and they show that lack of having a father to guide him. He needs someone to help him with problems that his mother is not able to help him with, either from a capacity issue or from other issues that are involved in the overall take, right? And so Johnny Lawrence, he asked Johnny Lawrence to be his teacher, his sensei. Johnny Lawrence, initially says no, and then realizes this kid's got nobody else, man. And so Johnny Lawrence, who's really a very bad sensei, is better than nothing. And I thought that was a really, really interesting aspect of the film. Of what about a situation where it's better than nothing, right? And I thought that's a really good point. That's a really valid point, and I really liked that. I thought that was a really fantastic aspect of the film overall. So I was really impressed with with how they handled that, and there was just a lot of growth for Johnny Lawrence. Daniel LaRusso, absolutely fantastic character progression, right? So one of the things that we see right away is that Daniel Lawrence is very successful as a car salesperson, right? He actually owns his own dealership, and the dealership is very successful, right? And again, I thought it was really impressive the way they actually, had really strong product placement in the show. I've grown to absolutely love product placement. It's just a part of all storytelling now, virtually all storytelling. And so, rather than whine about it, I just really like to see when it's handled well. And I thought the product placement in this was handled very, very well. Excuse me. So basically, you have this situation where, you're seeing this going forward, and Daniel LaRusso has this really nice dealership. He also has a wonderful family. He has a beautiful wife who appears to love him. He has a daughter and a son, both who seem to be relatively happy and healthy. And you can't count that out. Like, that's a big deal. This is an area where Daniel has succeeded, where Johnny has already failed as a husband and a father, where Daniel is succeeding. And so, where does that success come from? Well, you get the idea that this success came from two things. One, the love and care of Daniel's mother, which we get a cameo from his mother. The character's in there. I thought that was great. Really, really well done. Wonderfully done. And there were so many great callbacks to the old show. Thought that was really cool. But also the very specific and incredibly helpful interaction with, specifically with Mr. Miyagi, right? So that the lessons of balance that Mr. Miyagi had taught to Daniel stuck, in that he taught him how to work hard, how to be responsible, how to be respectful to other human beings, and that all those lessons, came together, and actually, Daniel had become a respected businessman, a good father, and a good husband. And just watching and just seeing how Mr. Miyagi handled these same issues, were enough for Daniel to take those lessons and carry forward and be successful. But at the same time, the show really shows you that even when things appear to be successful, you can have significant problems. And Daniel does have some significant problems. So one, there is a lot of beef between Daniel's mother and Daniel's wife. So Daniel's wife is a working mother, and Daniel's own mother is very dismissive of this, and is constantly calling out the Daniel's wife for not making food for them that's homemade and fresh. You know what I mean? Which I thought that was pretty ridiculous. If you looked at that family, it was clear that none of them were not getting the nutrition they needed. That was not, the issue that the Daniel Lawrence family was having. But the next one was, it was very clear that while Daniel and his wife Amanda really loved each other, his daughter Samantha and his son Anthony, there were very significant issues between all of them. So one, Amanda and Daniel seem to be very poor parents, right? From the perspective of, they supply their kids with everything they need, and their kids want for nothing from a material perspective, but they lack discipline, they lack respect for their parents and respect for other people. They're making choices on who they spend time with, that they're choosing to spend time with cruel, Samantha specifically is spending time with cruel and shallow people. Daniel's son Anthony absolutely lacks balance and really is not spending a lot of time with anyone, seems to be very sarcastic and spending a lot of time on video games, right? So you see within Daniel's household that while he has everything from a material perspective, he is still battling his own struggles. He has his own struggles to battle against, right? And so this is it's a very real situation. And also, you can see that he has struggles specifically with the work he does, right? Louis, his cousin Louis, was hired because he's kind of a friend of the family, and specifically he is in a situation where he is not actually. It was pretty crazy. Like, so Louis was a bad employee, and really should not have been working for Daniel at all, which is really kind of different, very, very different situation there. But it was an excellent film. I really enjoyed it. Just seeing how it actually went, and it was a really fantastic film. I was very impressed. Show overall, it was really excellent. The actual Cobra Kai itself, I really liked Cobra Kai a lot. Cobra Kai initially is just Miguel and Johnny, and Johnny acting as the sensei, and Miguel acting as a student. And one of my absolute favorite parts of the show was how specifically they showed Johnny Lawrence trying to get this dojo off the ground, and how he had real bills and he had to do this quickly and make enough money for this to make sense. He had to get students. He had to get those students paying. It's pretty clear that Miguel never pays him, which I think that's one of the really awesome parts of the show, is that, you are really seeing that Johnny, if he sees somebody who needs help and he can help them, he's going to do what he can to help them. And that's really, that means you're a person who's empathetic, who is seeing the situation in front of them and trying to respond in a very real way. And so Johnny Lawrence's desire to assist Miguel is really the heart of the show, and is really, really fantastic part of the show. So one of the things I thought was really interesting is what you get from the perspective of. So basically, you're looking at. So who else are the students, right? Well, the first real student who comes in is Aisha, right? And Aisha is Samantha's friend. She's kind of a geeky, nerdy science girl. And Samantha used to be a geeky, nerdy science girl, but now it looks like Samantha's interested in being like a kind of a socialite, a high school socialite, and that's what she's done. She's traded, good, honorable friends who are smart and creative for these really shallow, cruel people, right? And Aisha is creative and strong and and really smart, and she's just a nice person. And so basically at that point, she's being pushed around and cyberbullied by this girl Yasmin, who's one of Samantha's new cruel, shallow friends, and she decides to go to Cobra Kai simply in order to become stronger, both figuratively and literally, right? And so right away Johnny Lawrence is like, nope, we don't take any girls. And Miguel's like, hey, this is a real student. She has real money. This can be your second real student. So let's do this. And so Aisha is the second actual student of the Cobra Kai dojo. When Miguel is pushed by Samantha's boyfriend into a fight, he actually displays Cobra Kai karate very successfully at the high school, and like wrecks 3 or 4 she wrecks Samantha's boyfriend, not Robbie Keane. That's a separate item. And then also some of his bully friends, right? And so when everybody sees this, everybody shows up for Cobra Kai the next day, and out of this, Johnny Lawrence ends up getting a full dojo, right? Ends up getting between 15 and 25 active students who are part of Cobra Kai. And one of my favorite characters in the show was Hawk, right? So I thought this was really an interesting aspect of the show, was this kid who had a deformity on his lip. And so he had surgery on his lip in order to actually, for the lip to look better. But even after the surgery, it still was, really, it marred his face, right? So, his face does not look, it looks as though it's marred, right? So basically, he comes into Cobra Kai, this kid with this problem on his lip, and Johnny Lawrence calls him Lip, right? Which is incredibly dismissive and cruel and rude, right? And Miguel calls him out on it and says, hey, this kid's, you can't just call him Lip. We don't want to lose this person. He's a friend of mine. Let's keep him, treat him with respect, and let's do this right? And I thought this was really, really interesting the way they handled this. And Johnny Lawrence pushes back and he's like, the world's not going to forget that he has this thing on his face, and I'm not going to, right? He's got to get over, what this is. So he goes back out and he talks to the kid with the lip, and he tells him, Johnny Lawrence tells Hawk, right, which we'll get why he's named that in a minute. He says, you've got to flip the script on this, because when I look at you, all I see is your lip, right? And what Johnny Lawrence is saying is cruel and harsh, right? And the idea is that Johnny Lawrence is doing this to make him stronger, right? Now, I think Johnny Lawrence handled this in the wrong way, but that's the point of this show, is that Johnny Lawrence is a terrible sensei, right? But the reality is one of the reasons why he is being used as a sensei is sometimes there are people who will do a job when nobody else is doing it. And it looked like right now in the Valley, nobody else was doing, like for these kids in this space, this was the best sensei they were going to get at that time and in that moment, right? And so, so Johnny Lawrence, as bad as he was better than nothing. And I think that's the theme, is that Johnny Lawrence is better than nothing, right? And that's what some kids got, nothing, and that's what Miguel had, right? And so, so Johnny Lawrence tells him, you have to flip the script. And this was brilliant. So, the kid with the problem with his lip, with his lip, immediately leaves. He's upset. He leaves. But then he comes back the next day, and he has flipped the script. He has changed it so that when you look at him, the first thing you see is not the lip. He has a blue mohawk, right? And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And so, and then immediately Johnny Lawrence says, fall in, hawk, right? And I thought, whoa, like it's kind of interesting. And, honestly, of course, people who have deformities, there might be a better, there's without a doubt, right? There would have been 100 different ways to handle this better, right? But the kid who had the problem with his lip, right? His parents had not given him a path and had not shown him a path to deal with this in a better way where he was happy and he was fulfilled, right? Nobody had given him a solution, right? And so Johnny Lawrence was pressing him to supply his own solution. And Hawk did. He supplied his own solution to his problem, right? And I thought that was really, really interesting. So overall, I was just thrilled with Cobra Kai. I thought it was fantastic. I was blown away with the quality of the show. I'm really excited to see YouTube Red ramping up their content. I'm a big fan of of Cobra Kai. I would say 4 out of 5 stars is my rating for the show, and I am absolutely looking forward to season 2. Take care.